sketch and some of the outward aspect of Buddhism, is it not? Day before yesterday. And that gives us the background of the Buddhistic period and its development throughout its working. The four schools came into existence with the Mahayana and the Himalayan and the Himalayan, basis, the Himalayan Buddhism and the Buddhism in outside India, including Korea and Japan, China, and so on. And in Japan, it took that particular form of Zen Buddhism. That's. I think I did bring about the common elements between Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. Was it not? Yes, I think that was done. Yes. Now, just we took the philosophical or the part of Buddha's vision and outlook on life. He was certainly it was a great reform movement that he started and brought into being. And it took its roots from Indian culture in the time when he was living, because he found the religious life of the people given over to outer ceremonials and rituals, sacrifices, and traditional authority. So he must have found the whole thing lifeless and without any reality in it. That is why he must have tried to get away from the convention that was current in his age. The greatest quality of Buddha is his power of universal sympathy, by which he was able to feel the problem of pain in its universal proportions, you see. He could widen out the problem of pain from his individual, self to cosmic proportion, to universal proportions. Albeit in an exaggerated feeling. It was an exaggerated feeling because there are many other elements in the life of man than pain and suffering. But to him, this pain appeared to be the major, the main problem, the problem par excellence, as you would call it, you see. And therefore, though universally sympathetic and open to the whole working of the law of pain in mankind, it was exaggeration on his part to have paid exclusive attention to it and put it up almost as if it was a central problem of man, you see. That is the one aspect of it which, in spite of its universality, puts us on a little guard about accepting the solution of the problem which it suggests. When Vivekananda spoke about the heart of Buddha, he was referring to this power of universal sympathy. Vivekananda used to say like that perfect man should have the heart of Buddha, the intellect of Shankar, and so on. A sort of a combination. So when he spoke about the heart of Buddha, he was referring to this power of universal sympathy. But Vivekananda was less just to Buddha when he referred to Shankar's personality as the one with the loftiest or highest intellect. Because Buddha's was certainly a strong and a very clear intellect. Apart from his capacity of heart, which opened itself to all universal sympathy, his intellect also was clear and strong. He courageously repudiated all authority and means authority of the religious books, religious persons in his time. And with a keen edge of rationality, he cut the bonds of ritualism from the popular mind. One incident you remember that somebody said that, he's doing sacrifice. So somebody came and asked him, why is he doing sacrifice? So he said that if he does a sacrifice, then the animal that is put in the sacrifice goes to heaven. You see, the animal is not killed. This is putting animal into sacrifice is not killing. It is animal. So Gautam Buddha said yes. And why did he not put his father into the sacrifice so that the father may go to heaven? See? So he used to argue out like that, you see. Keen mind, which simply points out the defect in such a way as to bring out the whole thing clearly before the mankind. He said, why not he put his father into the sacrifice and he may go to heaven? His great service to the seeking of truth is the importance or the important place which he gave to man's intellect in the process of finding the truth. Gautam Buddha gave the important place to the seeking of mind. Upanishad had it also, but it was lost in the middle perhaps, and Gautam after 2000 years wanted to restore it again. He brought a clear and a detached thinking to bear on all human problems. This was a part of his great service to mankind. This very fact brings out also prominently the limitations of his outlook at the same time. He's having a clear and strong mind, and therefore he accepted only mind. Then his whole outlook was limited by intellect. So that it brings out the limitation of his outlook also prominently before our eyes. Accepting human intellect alone as the only guide, he had to work, and his seeking had to work under the limitations of the same intellect, with the result that he refused to allow his intellect or that of any other to tackle the problem of ultimate reality. He said, if somebody asked, who created the world, why there is suffering, he always never allowed his mind to put this question. He didn't allow anybody else to put these questions to him effectively, you see. The questions of origin, the fulfillment of the human spirit, inner truths which might overpass the boundaries of human reason, because his outlook was therefore bound to become pragmatic, not metaphysically or philosophic, because never try to tackle the origin of the world, the creation, its cause, its creator, or the nature of the original truth or reality, if there is any. Supposing he says that there is only, one force is working, but what is the nature of the force? About that also he didn't allow any speculation. He guarded himself against this tendency to arrive intellectually at a working knowledge or a prima facie case for anything that would probe into or find out and define the nature of the origin, the function of the ultimate reality, man's relation with it, and so on. He said, look, you have a practical problem, and don't trouble your minds with a problem which you cannot solve. Because according to him, mind cannot go beyond mind, and he didn't want to go beyond mind. So, within the range of mind and intellectual limitation, these problems of the ultimate are not finally capable of being solved. I mean, solving. You can make out an intellectual case, you can make out a rational case if you like, but it is open to mind to refuse it. That you can always have a counter case. You see, you can make out a case for positive approach to any reality and say there is a reality. You take the other side and you prove that there is no such reality. So that reason by its own nature would not be allowed or would not permit a man to come to any conclusion about the ultimate reality of the universe. His outlook therefore was pragmatic, and it is this rationality of his and his limiting to the actual that is a strong appeal for the Western mind. That is why Western mind is at once attracted by Buddhism, because it is intellectual. Even existentialists today derive much of their strength from the Buddhistic outlook. They turn their eyes not to mind but to life. You will see all the time. Their insistence will be on life, not on mind. They will all the time say mind is useless. Life alone matters. To be, to live, that is important, not to think and to decide and to know. You see, you are at this moment, that's all. You don't bother about it. You are living in the eternity. That is the existentialist outlook, you see. You are now in the eternity. And the question of finding out this is only to evade your present living in eternity. To them, life is a reality and not mind at all. Values have no importance. To be, existence is important. Value of existence is not important. You see, so that their whole and Buddha, having limited his mind to life, they have a great appeal. It has a great appeal to this modern pragmatic mind, which wants not to think about ultimate, but to look at life and immediately do something with life. You see, to deal with life in its present condition as it is. And Buddha therefore takes material world and life as they are for granted. You see, to him the nature of the world is permanently fixed. This is the world will be like this. Now this actually takes away from the whole outlook the possibility of evolution. You see, the evolutionary world is out of his ken altogether. The world can't evolve because it's a world fixed law. It will be like that. There will be no change. Sri Aurobindo puts his position rather clearly and shows how his method of solving the problem of man and the resulting state of nirvana can be seen in altogether a different light. Sri Aurobindo shows that he looked at his way of solving in one way, and the remedy he suggested, the Eightfold Path, and the result is nirvana. You follow the Eightfold Path, Ashtanga Marga, you attain nirvana, the condition asambonam. Now, Buddha never described it in detail in his life, nirvana, or his bodhi, you see what he got. It was not possible for him to convey correctly the whole content of his experience to people. So he generally spoke vaguely about it. Now, there he spoke as if you can say that I know it, but you can also say that I can't give you correct idea because in the mind I cannot put my experience and so on. Sri Aurobindo puts it in this way. Buddha simply refused to speculate on the supreme cause. That is quite true. In his own words, you can see this substantiation in the studies which all the Buddhist scholars have made. Buddha's intuition was confined to the cause of sorrow and the impermanence of things, and the release by extinction of ego, desire and samskar, means impressions, and so far he chose to go, his intuition of this extinction nirvana and the Vedantic intuition of a supreme unity were the seeking of one truth of spiritual experience. Nirvana on one side and one reality of the Vedanti on the other side. Were seeking of one truth of spiritual experience seen no doubt from different angles of vision and concluded in different intellectual forms, but with a common intuitive substance. The rest was foreign to Buddha's rigid practical purpose. He was only concerned with the problem of solving the difficulty of pain, solving the fact of pain, and he tried to make a remedy for that. And he used to say, as I told you, that if somebody asked him why there is pain and so on, he said, but why do you want to know why and wherefore and who did and all kinds of irrelevant questions? You want to get rid of pain, I give you the remedy. Now that is exactly pragmatic way of looking. You see, that shows that he proposed not a philosophy of life, but a way of life, without giving philosophy. That you accept this and you will get the result. Just as somebody who knows some cure tells you that you have got a headache, all right, I have got a remedy. You take this remedy, your headache will be cured. But then one who wants to inquire will ask why there is headache, how this remedy works, how does it proceed in my system, what does it do? These questions are there. The human intellect cannot be silenced like that. It's not possible. That's how Buddhism got the difficulty for remaining in India, because the questions come up always. And his own followers, as I showed you yesterday, when it came to the 2nd century AD, they had already changed their position to accepting of one reality already. And the Yogacara school put practice of yoga in the center of their effort, you see, so that the whole position of his followers had to undergo a change. You see, this pragmatic position had to be given up, and people used to define nirvana quite differently from what we find in the Sutta and the Abhidhamma and the Tripitakas. You see, the description of nirvana is Vajra, they will say, you see, thunderbolt. Nirvana is Shunya, zero, but zero holds within itself the thunderbolt, the power of omnipotence. You see, there is a Vajrayana school in Buddhism. So the position was changed. What I mean is that was development. We are dealing with the direct teaching of Gautam the Buddha, you see. In another context, he puts the spiritual content of nirvana in these words. Sri Aurobindo puts it like this. The Buddhistic nirvana, won by heroic spirit of moral self-conquest and a calm wisdom, is a state of ineffable calm and joy, open not only to a few like the Christian heavens, but to all, and very different from the blank cessation, which is a mechanical release of our pain and struggle, the sorry nirvana of the Western pessimist and the materialist's brute, flat end of all things. This nirvana is not a brute and flat end or a mechanical release, or it is not a privilege only of the few. Gautam left the door open to all. That was the conclusion. And idea of nirvana as holding the not only a zero condition, a void condition, but an active power of maintaining the world, the Vajra, you see the thunderbolt, as the eternal state also, well, is indicated by Sri Aurobindo in the following words. The one without a second of the Upanishads. The Upanishads speak of one without a second. Ekameva dvitiyam, they will say. Who is all that is. One without a second, who is all that is. And beyond all that is. The one without a second is all that is, and beyond all that is. Cosmic and supracosmic. Supracosmic and transcendent. The permanent of the Buddhists, in a word, the eternal and the infinite. It comes to define the eternal and the infinite. Even the Buddhists, when they speak of the permanent condition of the nirvana, it almost suggests the acceptance of eternity and infinity. Now, second point about Buddhism, further one. Having accepted mind as the only instrument of acquiring knowledge, the Buddha was bound to accept the law of cause and effect as inexorable. He had to admit that there is a law of cause and effect working in the world. A cause is inevitably followed by its result, and nothing happens without a cause. This is the position which he took. He had to take because he believed only in mind as the last instrument, only real test of coming to the truth or acquiring the truth. Well, it became inexorable in his outlook. Universe is an expression of a law. It's a law that is working. The question, who fixed the law? Why such a law? What is the nature of the force or power that is behind the law? Where to Buddha? Irrelevant. Intellectual, unanswerable. And his mind found them academic, almost an excuse for evading the practical issues of life. He would say that you are evading the issue. Issue is how to remove pain. It is not to know how pain came or who created pain. And he gave a story when he was asked this question directly during his lifetime. 3 times only during his lifetime this question was asked to him. The nature of the ultimate reality. 3 times only. And 3 times he had evaded the question. You see? That is why he is positively right when he says that, Buddha every time evaded the question. He refused to answer the question of ultimate reality. That's a perfectly authenticate, view. Once he was asked, and then he said that if you are hit by an arrow and you want to cure your wound, you do not want to inquire as to who prepared the arrow, how the arrow was prepared, what is a Brahmin or non-Brahmin who prepared the arrow, and so on. That those questions are not relevant. What you want to do is to cure the wound. That's all, and that is what matters. But the human mind, you see, the function of intellect is to know. And whether it can know fully or not, but it has always tried to know. And when you say arbitrarily or refuse the right to know, well, mind can take it for some time because of the power of personality, but it doesn't work in the end. It always has to give way. Gandhi, for instance, you see, is a great personality, and his logic was very weak. I can tell you. I mean, logic means intellect. So far as you accept his position, of course his logic is right. If you accept his assumption, then his conclusions are right. But the whole question is, if you take up a discussion of the fundamentals, he couldn't argue. He was not a keen intellect, but he was a powerful person. So nobody could, you see, stand against him. But ultimately his philosophy will have to stand the test of intellect, isn't it? And it is going back because it can't make its headway. What remains of his outlook is something useful for man, not philosophically, justifiable. Non-violence or peaceful settlement of public questions or international question has become a necessity. Not because of his philosophy, but because of the need of the situation. You see, the logic was there long ago. Logic was not applied by people. He brought in a willpower to put this whole idea of non-violence into operation in public questions. That was his great service to modern mankind and to India. But if you ask about fundamental of life, its fulfillment, it doesn't stand the test of intellectual thinking. You see, if you say that you can remain completely detached, like a doctor who is operating on a patient. When a doctor operates a patient, he is completely detached. Well, a man who kills somebody can be so detached, he would refuse to believe it. Now, this is quite possible state of psychology. You cannot refuse. You can say nobody will be able to follow, but then how many are able to follow non-violence? That argument applies to non-violence equally. How many are able to follow non-violence? If you say capacity of man to follow is not the test of an intellectual truth. So he couldn't argue out points of his outlook to satisfaction of intellectual questions. No, he could. In fact, we asked him, we cornered him very often. You see, I asked him what would be the ultimate fulfillment of man. Was the whole world created and all these, multiple universal energies working to create at the end what kind of being? A moral being. Somebody who is moral. Is that the summum bonum of whole working of universal energy? He couldn't say that. No, he said, I feel like this. That is a different matter. You feel and you may follow and you will be right and you will be great. All that is granted. What I am pointing out is that Buddha, being a powerful person, he carried the things before him. But his refusal to human mind to answer fundamental questions of the original questions of philosophy, well, ultimately made his whole philosophy weak. Philosophically, because it's not a philosophy. Buddhism is an outlook. It is a way of life. It's not philosophy of life, you see. There is no question of why and wherefore, and who created and why he created, and why the world is as we find it. There is no answer to that in Buddha's whole outlook. Well, yes. His mind found them academic, yes, an excuse for evading the practical issues of life. It was this mental attitude that did not allow him to accept either God or self. Aurobindo says about it, the inexorable law of karma is irreconcilable with a supreme moral and personal deity. And therefore the clear logic of Buddha denied the existence of any free and all-governing personal God. All personality he declared to be a creation of ignorance and subject to karma, law of action and reaction. That is why, because of his mental limitation, he couldn't accept anything else. So he had to say, if that is required, then who works the world? Well, karma, law of action and reaction. Then now in the explanation of this law of action and reaction, there are plenty of difficulties, you see. Because it is not a law that seems to be all the time squaring, you see. I mean, the law that all the time doesn't seem to hold good. And there are results which are quite disproportionate to the cause, and there are causes quite insignificant in proportion to the results, and so on. And sometimes there are no causes and no results, and yet things happen. Absolutely without any cause and effect relationship. So for that he had Well, practically no answer. He stressed the place of pain and suffering in human life, and according to some, the frustration of man's desire in life. Pain is due not merely physical pain, but frustration of unsatisfied desire. You see, frustration that comes as a result of desire not being satisfied. So when desire is not satisfied, there is frustration, and frustration causes pain. Well, his saying was all is suffering. You see, sarvam dukkham, you see, dukkham dukkham, sarvam dukkham. That's how it proceeds. With regard to that, Sherndo said in one of his writings that Buddha's teaching laid heavy stress on sorrow and impermanence of things. This was a stress which was a little too heavy. In fact, pain and impermanence were known, and even their place had been accepted in Indian culture before Buddha. Pain did not become known to Indian philosophy or Indian culture when Buddha came on the scene, not at all. Pain was very well known as an element of life, and it had its place. For instance, in Kathopanishad, which is certainly pre-Buddhistic, you see, in its composition. In Kathopanishad, you find Nachiketa going to the god of death. Nachiketa goes to the god of death. You see, the story is that this young boy found that his father was only doing a ceremonial, sacrifice and not keeping to the spirit of the law, spirit of the sacrifice. The idea is that you must give something in charity when you do sacrifice. So what his father was doing was that he was giving old cows, for charity and keeping the young ones, without giving. So this boy got a little annoyed and said that, well, if you have to sacrifice, you must sacrifice the best things. So he couldn't tell that to his father, but when the ceremony is going on, he intervened and told his father, Father, you are giving this in charity, but whom will you give me? That's all. Like that means somebody whom you like most, you must give in sacrifice. That was his suggestion to his father. So he said, whom will you give me? The father was busy with the ceremony. People were reading, you see, it's a big, it is a complex ceremony. Everybody is up shouting, and then sacrifice is going on, and religious man is sitting, and he has to provide this, provide that. He was very busy, he didn't reply. Again came in between and again asked him, whom will you give me? He didn't say. A third time when he said, I give you to God, get out, he said. Give it to death, you see. To Yama, they will say, God of death. You go to hell, as you say, you see. So well. So this boy took it seriously and said, well, I'll go to the God of death. I'll go. This is the story of the Kathopanishad, you see. So he went to the God of death. The God of death was absent. He had gone out on work. He had a lot of work to do. So many people to die every day. No joke. If you're in office, you have awful work to do. Who died, how he died, and whether it was the time to die. And, it's a troublesome thing. You can get a wrong man. In fact, this was just the wrong man. He came and sat on his door for 3 days. So when the God of death came back, he said, how is it you are here? He said, my father sent me here. He said, go to the God of death, so I'm here. Well, your time was not up, he says. So you are a guest. Because otherwise everybody has to come to the God of death, you see, and that is a process of nature. So therefore you are my guest, and then you remain here 3 days without being, taken care of. It's not good for me. But I was absent. So you take 3 boons. He remained here at my door for 3 days without being, respected and taken into my house and cared. Well, you have asked for 3 boons. I will give you 3 boons. So he asked that my father should not get angry when I go back, because I am going to go back. Because my time, as you say, is not up, so I have to go. So my father should not get angry when I go back. I said, all right. Then second thing he asked about fire, a performance of sadhana, you see, karma yoga, by which you offer your actions to the fire and you attain immortality. And the third question he asked was, what happens to man when he dies? Because you are the god of death, so you are in the best position to answer this question. You are the god of death, so you are in charge of the office, chief of the office, you see. And so I want to know what happens to man when he dies. So he said, no, that is a question you shouldn't ask. You ask any other question. You ask for money, you ask for wealth, you ask for power, you ask for enjoyment, you ask for kingdom, that I will give you, but this you should not ask. He said, I have no desire to ask anything else. You think I am a fool? Then this boy says, that's the sentence now, that's where it comes. He says, Sashima pachyate martya sashima ujayate punah. Like grass does the mortal die, like grass he is reborn again. This is Nachiketas telling the god of death. You see the boy. And having seen you, means known about you, Ati dirghe jivite ko rameta. Who would like to enjoy a long life? Who would like to be, yes, looking at thy face or to thee, who would take delight in a very long life? So life and its impermanence and its subjection to pain was known. I am not pointing out anything about Upanishads and so on. We are not studying the Upanishads. We are only seeing that Buddha's perception was known. As old as the Kathopanishad, the man said it's no use worth living. When you know about death, you don't enjoy the prospect of a very long life because death is sure. So what's the use? And man is born like grass, impermanence of life is there. He's reborn like grass and dries up like grass and is born again like a whole field of grass, you see, where everything grows. There is no permanence of things. That is how Nachiketas put it to the god of death. So there you see the impermanence of which Buddha speaks is felt and known. But the remedy there is different, the remedy here is different. That's the point. Sri Aurobindo puts it in the proper perspective in the growth of Indian culture. He says that Buddhism arrived at a later stage and seized on one side of these ancient teachings to make a sharp opposition between impermanence of life and the permanence of the eternal. Impermanence of life here and permanence of the eternal, which brought to a head and made a gospel of ascetic exaggeration. You see, exaggeration went on the side of asceticism. Therefore, abandonment of life and giving up of activities, because all was unreal and impermanent and temporary and full of pain and suffering. Well, naturally, therefore, the tendency became exaggerated. Though he hastened to add that it was not entirely due to Gautam Buddha. There has been, he says, indeed from early times in Indian mind, a certain strain, a tendency towards lofty and austere exaggeration in the direction taken by Buddhism and Mayavad. You see, asceticism, renunciation, or an extreme attitude basing itself on the spirit. Well, that has been a strain of Indian mind, which is exemplified in Buddha as well as Shankar. You see, Buddha speaks of impermanence of things and, pain as the constant and permanent element of life. Well, Shankar speaks of the world being an illusion, you see, is unreality or a reality of a second order. Abandoning of desire also formed a part of Indian culture before Gautam Buddha gave it the important place in his outlook. Control of desire was well known that way. Krishna Tyaga, he called it Tinna, you see, in the Pali language. Now, the Upanishads before Buddha and the Gita in Buddha's own time perhaps clearly pointed out the need of controlling and in spiritual life of abandoning desire. Desire was not supposed to be an accepted element of human perfection in Indian scheme of things. So that abandoning of desire as a remedy for removing pain was a special, remedy applied by Gautam Buddha, but as an element of perfection and self-control, the abandonment of desire was well known in India. It was not always applied as a remedy for evil or for suffering, but it was always applied as a means for self-control, means for rising to a higher scale of delight. From the lower delight, rise to the higher delight. The giving up of desire was regarded as necessary. So the desire and need of its being refused or controlled or rejected was also there in Indian outlook before Gautam Buddha, and also has been always afterwards also. The Eightfold Path lays stress on personal effort, on what the Upanishad would call tapasya, you see, and also limits the effort to the attitudes adopted by the mind. It does not entertain the goal of Upanishadic effort, which is the reaching of the infinite. It takes up only tapasya, personal effort, but personal effort is limited in Buddhistic outlook to the Eightfold Path. Right thought, right action, right will, right profession, you see, and so on. Eightfold, eight right things you have to do. And there is a code which gives you a long list of what you should not do. I don't know whether I have that here, but it is a very detailed list of a terrific nature. I think it is something which is very strong in its denunciation. Yes, you see, not to injure anyone, not to steal, no sex life, no untruth, no drink, no dance, no music, no ornaments, no soft bed, no gold, no silver. Well, this is only, I took out from, you see, the laws which he has. Well, you have to observe those things if you want to follow the Buddha, you see. Now, that makes a rather a difficult task, you see. The Upanishads followed a path of tapasya, self-effort, but as a result, they put before the human, aspirant the goal of shooting beyond the limit of mental consciousness. You see, that was there all the time. Well, Gautam Buddha said that no, you remain within the limit and acquire an equilibrium, quietness, a detached condition, and a control over lower tendencies. That will quietly lead you more and more to cessation of activity, cessation of movement of consciousness. And as when the consciousness stops completely, you will enter into a state of nirvana. Whereas in the Upanishad, they said that you have to concentrate like the one who is trying to take the bull's eye, you see. And when you shoot with your concentration, your being must enter into the goal, into the bullseye, like the arrow piercing the bullseye, so that the one who aspires, well, pierces into the Brahman. It enters into another consciousness altogether. That was the result of personal effort advocated in the Upanishad, you see. Whereas here, the effort is that you withdraw your force of action because it will lead to pain, you see, more and more suffering and complication. Therefore, what you do is to reject desires, lower impulses, and I give you the list, you see. So it's a formidable list for anyone to comply and carry out effectively in life. Well, after that, you withdraw more and more the impulse of life itself, and the whole consciousness withdraws into into complete cessation, inactivity or silence or void, and then you experience you can say the bliss of nirvana, the silence of nirvana, the inactivity of nirvana, the eternity of nirvana. Then you go on filling up with your own mind the content of nirvana, you see, because he never gave a positive definition of nirvana himself. The Eightfold Path, accepting, you see, there also, in the Eightfold Path, he says that the man of action, man who knows, you see, and is conscious, he is all the time conscious of what he is doing. This is in one of his books, you see, that how do you know that a man is awakened and practicing the Eightfold Path? Then he says, well, the man will be conscious of what he is doing. When he is walking, he will know that he is walking. When he is doing something, he will be known that he is doing it. But psychologically, that process amounts to the realization of the Purusha consciousness. the Sankhya's division of the subjective witness self and the flow of nature. This is the realization of mental Purusha in the Buddhistic way, that's all. When Buddha prescribed this path, that you see what is the sign that you are practicing the old eightfold path and successfully going ahead or progressing in it. He said that the man who is, nearing his goal will know what he is doing. If he is walking, he will know that he is walking. If he is doing something else, he will know what he is doing. This is exactly the Purusha consciousness, the detached view or the witness self that watches the operation of nature and is conscious of what it is doing. It is really the realization of the Purusha consciousness advocated by the Sankhyas and accepted by the Vedanta school as a necessary part of their yogic discipline, in fact. Well, Gautam Buddha, Eightfold Path, accepting the all-pervading nature of pain and impermanence of things, tends to, in actual practice, to withdrawal from all activity. It is nivritti, as they call it in India. You see, towards more and more withdrawal from activity. Because in order to successfully carry out this program, you have to withdraw more and more. So, though it certainly can and does lead one to a serene and detached life occupied with the pursuit of ethical values of life. But in all cases, it is not correct to say that nirvana would necessarily and must lead to withdrawal from life. Sri Aurobindo points it out in one of his writings in Life Divine, in a passage, that it was possible for Buddha to attain the state of nirvana and yet act puissantly in the world, impersonally in inner consciousness, in his action, the most powerful personality that we know of as having lived and produced results upon the earth. Buddha's own instance and example, if you study, then you will find that it is not withdrawal from action, but capacity to do a very powerful action, because his is a very powerful action on mankind. Well, that he had an impersonal attitude inside and a powerful personality that acted. Well, the same result can follow to anyone else who is a candidate for the nirvana. The impact of Buddhism on Indian society was not very salutary. This aspect, though not important from a metaphysical point of view, yet from Buddha's own pragmatic point of view, it is of great importance. Because, you see, that made Buddhism itself go down. Whether philosophically it is good or not, or right or not, leaving aside the question, the fact of its impact on Indian society made the position of Buddhism itself weak in this way. He explains it. Buddhism first gave an exaggerated and enormous extension to the ascetic ideal and monistic impulse. See, moni, life of monk. Erased the transition. In India, there was a transition. Gradually, you worked your way from student career to family life, from family life to detachment, from detachment to sannyas, renunciation. Brahmacharya, grahastha, vanprastha, sannyasta. You see, there are 4 orders of life, 4 divisions of life, in which in the beginning you were a student and one who was preparing himself. Then you took up the responsibility of social life. Then you retired from social life and did some good to society in an impersonal way without any selfish interest or motive. And then you renounced in order to devote yourself to spiritual life. This was a state of transition. Buddhism came and created only 2 orders. You see? Erased the transition and upset the balance of society. Its victorious system left only 2 orders, the householder and the ascetic, the monk and the layman. An effect which subsists even to present day. And the result was tragic for Buddhism itself, because the layman, being unqualified for the highest realization, nirvana, so long as you are not a monk, you cannot realize nirvana. So, the householder being unqualified for the highest realization of Buddhism, nirvana, he could never make an effort for it. And the monks, by the mere fact of an outward renunciation, simply have to take a robe, well, they were regarded automatically qualified for the realization. And perhaps they felt, the monks, that their main duty was to lead the layman, not to realize nirvana. There was a big flock to look after, isn't it so? The result was terribly tragic for Buddhism itself. It left it, without the majority were laymen. They could never make the effort. The minority were monks. Well, instead of dedicating themselves to nirvana, they had to dedicate themselves to the layman and their guiding. On the psychological side, the explanation of human personality or human subjective self was that it is a flux. Buddha said that it's a stream of consciousness which contains ideas, impulses, etc. And this reduced man to a bundle of changing forces. Man is not constant entity. A bundle of changing forces, impressions, changing feelings, changing perceptions. And he found that no permanent entity was necessary for the explanation of the subjective existence and subjective actions of man. Chair, at one place in Life Divine speaks about that. The self, like the ego, would be only an ideative formation by an illusory phenomenal consciousness. The phenomenal consciousness itself is illusory. And you say that there I feel I, or say that is only an ideative projection. It is an ideative formation. Your idea is forming it, there is no I. And one who forms it is only phenomenal, flux, all the time changing. So, according to him, all is becoming, there is no being. The Zen position almost comes to that. That becoming is only being. Perhaps that is that little change there. That becoming is only being, but in his outlook, all is becoming, there is no being. It later changed onto this position that becoming is the being. The logical corollary supported by Buddha's own parting advice to Ananda is that each one has to rely on his own effort and walk his way to salvation or make his way to salvation or nirvana. To reach the goal, no one can help anyone else. This is what he told Ananda on his deathbed almost. When Ananda asked him, well, he said, you have to work each one your own path and win your own salvation by your own personal effort. This tended on one side to create a very individualistic approach to the whole spiritual problem. This was a very, very strong result in India, you see. That Indian collective life became social and politically very weak after Buddhism. Because each one thought that I have to solve my own problem. I am born in pain and suffering. This is impermanence. This is not a lasting world. Law of cause and effect is at work. I have to work out my salvation. What happens to somebody else is not my business. I can't help. And nobody can help me. So the problem of ignorance or pain, call it pain, became very individual, though it is general. And in the solution of this problem, he couldn't suggest a collective effort. Though a collective effort came into existence after him, the Sangha was formed. You see, the Buddhistic, church, the Buddhistic community was formed. But that was not what he wanted. It just, even the apotheosis of Buddhism followed, Buddha followed, you see. Solution of man's deepest problem thus depriving the collectivity of the common urge, while on the other hand it went against the demand of human nature for mutual help in the whole process of life. It was found necessary after some time to answer this need of human nature by apotheosis of Buddha himself. He was himself made God. And then whole bodhisattva was created, the idea of bodhisattva, that is a human spirit who goes to the almost the stage of nirvana and does not enter nirvana but goes on helping mankind. You see? That is a bodhisattva that came into being. So, against his own advice, this apotheosis was done, and the concept of bodhisattvas came into being with a rich Buddhistic pantheon, and with the results that we know. So there gives you roughly some idea of the Buddhistic outlook, and I think that we have exhausted Buddha's outlook as in the main, whatever it concerns the Buddhistic outlook. Now there are some side outlooks which some students of Buddhism have tried to put forward, you see. To the question, is there a soul? He expressed no opinion. And then whenever he was asked about the ultimate cause, the reply he gave was, oh, I don't want to reply because, these are his words, because it is not calculated to profit. You will not have any profit out of it, advantage, you see, practical advantage out of it. And his outlook, one student who has written a thesis on him, says that Buddha's teaching comes to this, that one must achieve a willingness to accept things as they are. The Buddhistic way of looking at things is to accept things as they are. That is both the way and the goal. Now this, you see, looks intriguing, but it is full of contradictions in the one sense. First of all, why should things be accepted as they are? One. Oh, because I want to keep my own self out of it, perhaps, is it? Or I don't care what happens to what I do, to my actions, or whatever happens to the complex, you see, the collectivity. Because willingness to accept things they are almost amounts to a sort of, pessimistic outlook, or at least an outlook of inert acceptance of things as they are. If change is constantly taking place, is it not the duty of man to participate in the change and bring about the desired change? According to them, the change is all the time taking place, and you are changed. You are not a man. You are not an entity. You are not a soul. You are a changing, bundle of ideas, thoughts, images. A flow of consciousness is running all the time. Granted. All right, if the change is taking place, why should one accept things as they are? If change is taking place, you can also participate in the change by trying to bring about a change in the direction desired. Why not? How do you know that the change does not want the change you want? And basically it means, he says, willingness to accept world as it is. For the desire to change it is to want to do violence to it. Now this is, I think, a misreading of Buddha's message. In fact, Buddha actually changed the world, and you can't say that he did violence to the world. Yes, according to him, the man who knows, he will be, that there is a body, he will feel and know that there is a body. When he is walking, he is sure and is aware that I am walking, and he knows that there is a body. Well, and he knows what he is doing. Well, this is exactly the Purusha consciousness in the mind. The subjective self, witness, and the the one who sees, and in the flow of nature that he is seeing. In Buddha's idea of rebirth, he was compelled to admit because of law of karma. But the machinery of rebirth, and whether rebirth can be fully explained by law of causation, is open to doubt. Whether rebirth, phenomenon of rebirth can be explained satisfactorily on the basis of law of cause and effect. This part of the outlook, he was compelled to accept because of law of karma, of cause and effect. You see, cause and result. That causation law he had to admit, therefore rebirth. But the machinery of rebirth, and whether in rebirth, how the law of cause and effect is really applied and is correct, it is accepted, almost as a philosophical doctrine, you see. It's not accepted as a dynamic explanation of the process of rebirth. Because according to him, there is nobody to be reborn, really speaking. It's only the changing flux of ideas, thoughts, and impulses that is to be reborn, is it not? No one is to be reborn. So probably he thought it was not material to inquire into. If nobody was being reborn, it doesn't matter the process. But he left it quite unanswered, this problem of process of rebirth, and whether the law of cause and effect can be fully applied to the process of rebirth. Does it always take place, as a result of the law or operation of cause and effect? It's a very doubtful proposition. Well, that brings us to the end of Buddhistic outlook and even some of Sri Aurobindo's ideas on it. I think that we need not take a Buddhistic position now for any further consideration, because we have seen what it means and what it can give us so far as our present search is concerned. We have taken some elements. All
right. The appearance of Buddha in mind. There was hardly a reason for the appearance of Buddha in a need. What was that need? What was that? What was the answer to what need?
It was in the truth, and he was responsible for putting the mind in its proper place in seeking of the truth. The mind that is working now on the Western side is a mind that is applied to life. Here also is a mind that is applied to life. But here life in its outward aspect, here life in the aspect of pain and its release. You understand? Yes. And in the solution, as here the scientists applying themselves intellectually or mentally to the possibilities of matter and making life more, you can call it comfortable and more organized and more effective and more powerful and so on, more rich materially, he liked rather to apply this intellect to find out how to eliminate pain and how far the human being can rise in the realization of higher values without overpassing the limit of mind. Supposing mind was not overpassed, how far can the human consciousness or human being go in actualizing or in materializing or embodying in himself the higher ethical values of life? Non-injury to other people or sympathy for all and all things which you find in the Ashtanga Marga. It means an effort to so mold oneself, so control oneself and so change oneself with only mind as to arrive at an ethical perfection, right, in which one is impersonal and one is living with a mind that is clear and with a serenity and peace and wisdom as far as the mind could go. That is about that.
Nirvana was beyond mind, wasn't it?
Well, he couldn't describe it, so it is difficult to know.
Oh, I see.
He never described it. You see, he refused always to give any exact answer to that question. You see, of the ultimate reality, nature of experience of nirvana, and so on. So afterwards, many people had to say many things which were not in agreement. You see, somebody said it is extinction, another said no, it is a release into a condition in which you can't describe. Another said it is full of void and nothing is in it, and somebody said no, that nothing itself is all and is more than all, and so on, so on. That was afterwards the whole position changed. Beyond mind is not all. One level today morning we have seen in our study that even when you enter the level beyond mind, it's not as if you are entering one region which is well known to everybody who enters beyond mind, you see. That is what one has to know, that beyond mind is again universes after universes. So, if you enter in Savitri, if you read Savitri after after King Ashwapati has reached the cosmic consciousness, then he stands before the cosmic being and cosmic power. And he sees the supreme power standing behind and supporting the cosmic Purusha and the cosmic Shakti. You see, the Vishwarupa and the Vishwa Shakti, the Virat Shakti, the power of the cosmic universe, and the Lord of the universe, so to say. And the supreme power is supporting. And Ashwapati swoons when he sees this vision because it is overpowering and too strong for him. And then when he gets up, afterwards he makes an effort to leave consciously this mental world and enter into another world. And he enters into what he calls the unknowable, the region of the unknowable. Because constantly you are referring to the mind. And mind is knowable. And there where you are going, it is the unknowable, you see. So it is not zero, but it is unknowable to the mind. And if Buddha remained in that region and came back from there, somewhere in between, a passivity of the higher consciousness, somewhere either in the higher mind or illumined mind or overmind, a passive or static aspect of the overmind, then he might have come back with the idea of, the incommunicability of it, unknowability of it, so to say. He might have to the mind nothing to carry because it is so different from mind that he finds it is unknowable to the mind. And so he gave no definition of that experience, though it was very illuminating and he could know himself, feel that it led him to a truth. But the formulation of the truth he couldn't do except to the eightfold path, and that was moral formulation for the mind. It was not for reaching the condition, and he never described the condition in detail as to give an exact idea. So that when we say that Buddha might have entered nirvana in the sense of something beyond mind, it could not amount to the experience of the highest truth consciousness. It can amount to the cosmic being or cosmic consciousness or cosmic self, you see, which enters the unknowable, the field of the unknowable. And if you remain in the unknowable, naturally it remains the unknowable throughout afterwards. Because your mind is inquiring. You see, his difficulty or his advantage was that he was intellectually convinced of remaining on the intellectual level only. So now how to describe something which is really not intellectual in terms of intellect? So he never entered that region of description, and it remained always the unknowable. But unknowable is not non-existence or illusory. It is unknowable to the mind only. It is not that he had no experience. He couldn't bring any positive description of the experience. And also it doesn't mean that he entered into the supramental truth consciousness. Perhaps no. Because if that was so, well, he would have spoken that I have the truth. That is the one characteristic of that level when you reach beyond mind to a definite status in your consciousness, well, you are positive about what you know. And that is not the recent people like Ramakrishna or Sri Aurobindo saying, but Upanishad also speaks like that. In the Upanishad, you find a positive, assertion by people who have the experience saying, I am the Supreme, or I am the, He. Soham asmi, I am He. You see, or thou art that. Thou art that. You see, or all is that. You see, I am He, or thou art that, or all is He, are the expression of that experience. There are about a dozen others. I am only giving you roughly one or two that come to my mind just now, but there are more than a dozen expressions in the Upanishad speaking about the nature of that experience as a positive attainment. Attainment of a status which is not intellectual and mental. A status beyond mind, possible to man, unknowable by mind, but attainable by an effort. That is the nature of that experience. They never said that you can describe it fully in mind. But they also said that you can realize it by effort of sadhana, by expansion of consciousness. It's not by mind that you know it, but by changing consciousness. So that process was known before Gautam Buddha. Gautam took a side and tried to establish mind as the only reality for seeking the truth. And within the limit of mind, how far could one go in seeking the reality? And this is just why, because he is rational, any people in the West who seek the truth are attracted by him because he is rational. They are also strongly founded in reason. Therefore, they find, I want to solve the problem of life. Immediately, Gautam Buddha's attitude attracts them. They say, here is somebody who thought about life and suffering and tried to say something about the solution and so on. So naturally, it attracts them very much. And he didn't, take up the problem of ultimate reality or metaphysical question about ultimate of life or end of man and whether the world can change or whether the law is inexorable. Nothing. It says in the complicated, the what do you call the weaving of the web of intellectual abstractions, as they would call it. You see that, there is a maze of intellect. You see, it is a labyrinth from which you can never come out once you enter into it. The experience, naturally, nobody doubts the veracity of his statement and the truth that he had an experience. I think nobody in the world doubts it, including those who are not Christians, I'm sure. Nobody doubts that he had the experience. Now, experience is the beginning. If you read Sri Aurobindo's Lights on Yoga, he says, realization of God is the beginning of real yoga. Then afterward, the problem is what to do with it. What do you want to do with it? Realization he takes for granted almost. Sri Aurobindo says that, of course, is axiomatic. You must, because that's the reality. That's the only reality that exists. Therefore, you must realize it. You must experience it. Now, problem is what to do with it. And there, all branching and all the kind of application of the whole realization or experience comes. What he meant was that if you follow what I say in my experience, you will realize what I have done or what I have realized. That is all that he wanted to say, that follow what I say and follow the path which I lay down, you will have the same experience as I have. Quite, nobody doubts the correctness of the statement. What is the way that he laid down? Then you have to go to St. Peter. Naturally, and then St. Peter lays down or somebody else lays down something. What he lays down, you have to get from his words only. You see, and then what he lays down is perhaps very simple in one sense. That you must be simple like a child or non-violent or have identity with your neighbor. The same soul that is in you is in your neighbor also. The injunction that you must offer your left cheek when you are hit on the right is not a guide to conduct at all. It's not a guide to do. It's a guide to realize that he is your own self. That's all. What it amounts to is not that you submit to what he is doing. That is exactly what they have applied and misapplied Christ's teaching. He didn't mean to say that I am giving you a rule of conduct, that every time when somebody is, treats you badly, well, you allow him to treat you still worse. Is it not? That comes to that, is it not? you must allow him to treat you still worse. That's not the point. Point is, you realize that what is coming through him is coming to you from your own self. That is the meaning. No Christian understands it easily, I know. But that is the meaning. How could we lay down for 2000 years rule of conduct for thousands of persons? He could lay down a line of experience. He couldn't say to, no, that's not the truth. Truth is this. It's an injunction for action or a moral maxim or a rule of conduct. It is an indication for inner realization. Realize that it is nobody else is hitting you. And the moment you realize that it's yourself, probably he won't hit you. More probable. It was only symbolic like that, as I am pointing out to you. Well, if people have not understood it, what can Christ do? And he didn't lay down all his outlook in a form so that modern mind could make something out of it, you see. Modern mind can't make much out of it. They will have to go by people who have interpreted it. And there have been so many interpretations of Christianity that you will be in a mess if you listen to everybody. There are about 250 sects of Christianity, do you know? 250 sects. So you make up your mind. With the Roman Catholic and the Protestant and the Greek and the Russian Church, main divisions. After that in the Protestant, how many you think? Among Roman Catholic, how many? Franciscans? I know, you'll be nowhere. The moment you get into, the maze of the church, well, you can't get out of it. It's impossible. Of value to train your mind or to turn your mind to certain channels. First, to self-control of impulses and vital being. One thing you have to do is to check your vital being, the desire soul, you see. You have to put a check upon it. That's one good result. And secondly, that you can, what depends on your aim. Generally, the aim is to still the mind and then, if possible, concentrate on one thing, on any one thing. Well, if it gets concentrated, you get a mental peace or mental status or mental condition in which you are more composed than when you are distracted and divided. And whether they attain any reality, I don't know. Well, because if some reflection of something comes down when your mind is quiet from above, you see, if you are made to feel the percolation of peace, for instance, coming down from above, and you think it's a result of your mental effort, yes, it can be. But generally what happens is that it promotes a fixed mental attitude rather than a realization. And the fixed mental attitude is useful because you can guide yourself in life by that fixed mental attitude. If you can succeed in fixing what Gautam Buddha says, amounts to that, fixing your mental attitude. And once it is fixed, you can constantly guide yourself by taking help of that attitude. In that, one difficulty or one difference between people who keep their mind open to higher potentiality and possibility and those who close their potentiality in the mind is that in the effort where you accept higher realities, you keep your heart open to higher realities also. Whereas here you keep yourself close to the mental and to intellectual possibilities of realization and mental conditions. That's all. Their attitude is that mind takes up an attitude of simplicity or control or peace or right-mindedness or right eightfold paths. You see, you fix your attitude like that. Well, then naturally all your life activities will be guided by that attitude. Here you keep your attitude open to a higher truth than mind, and you keep your attitude open to receiving higher guidance from consciousness deepest within you or higher above you. Yes, that makes the difference of the point of origin from where the guidance is received, and that will show itself in the actual process of life. We'll see it actually in life. It makes a world of difference because you are only tapping mental possibilities by a mental attitude, and at most unconscious to you something higher percolates or may percolate. But that is at the maximum. Whereas here you are constantly opening out the unknowable, so to say, the unknown, and all the time the light of the unknown is rushing into you. So that the guidance that you get is not always from your mental attitude, opening to something more than mental. Justification of religion, you see.
Well, I'm thinking that, but I didn't want to bring that up. When they had such a sorry picture of Christianity. Because I think that's at the heart of Christianity.
Yes.
We do aspire and open
yes.
minds to
yes.
receive
yes.
the light.
Should.
Because there's no sense in Christ saying, I am the way, the truth, and the light, unless we do that. That involves a great deal.